Okay, it's great to see all of you. I feel like we were gone for a while. Thank you. Well, there's a little bit of feedback, Mark, if you can just check that. I want to talk about perseverance today, and I just before I start, I just want to say thank you to everybody who kind of ran things and helped with things while we were out of town. It's always a little bit difficult to leave because there's many things to do, and I'm especially grateful. I know that it's not anybody's idea that they're excited to give a sermon. Generally, not something that someone wants to do in their summer vacation or so. But Gilo and Sammy both were willing to do that, and I really appreciate them for that. And I hope that there was something of value in their messages over the last couple of weeks. Sammy actually talked about something that kind of I've been thinking about. Last week she talked about new beginnings, and she talked about how we oftentimes celebrate people's endings, like the graduation and retirement, accomplishments, that people have in their life, and then of course the big one at the end of our life, right? People come together and we try to celebrate their life and all the things the ways that they touch people and the way they impacted the world. But we don't really celebrate beginnings so much. And I was thinking about it. Well, we kind of celebrate babies, right? Like a baby shower, which is really more for the mom, of course. But and we celebrate like weddings or blessing, kind of a beginning of a new part of our lives. But in some ways, it's a celebration of a beginning. It's a celebration of an end, because we're celebrating somebody ending their life as a single person. Yeah, I was gonna say lonely, but like it's all in perspective, right? Like after being together with Adoni for 20 years, I can't imagine life as a single person. Like, what is that, right? But as a single person, I didn't know what I was missing out on. So it's like, I don't want to imply that all you single people are lonely, but you have a lot to look forward to in your life, is all I'm saying. It's a good thing, I think, that we celebrate these accomplishments. Like when people hit major milestones, graduating high school or GPA. A lot of you guys just graduated GPA. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, Peggy. That's a big accomplishment. A lot of effort went in, and I think it's important that we celebrate accomplishments, because I think there's something innately within us that understands that, of course, it's good to start something. It's not easy to start something new, but there's something about finishing well that really resonates with us, right? Many people start something and they never finish the thing, right? Or we start something, but then along the way we recognize, depending on what that thing is, it could be starting a life as a married couple, starting having children, starting college, starting a business, starting GPA. There's going to be challenges that are going to come along the way. And so in order to have a heart to end something well from something you started is not easy. We recognize that, I may commit to doing something. Maybe I make a promise to God, or I starting in a relationship. And we recognize that, there's going to be a lot of challenges. There's going to be times where we get discouraged. There's going to be times where we maybe feel a little bit empty inside. There's going to be times where we feel, we made a mistake. There's going to be times where, there's so many things that happen. Let me see. Like a frustrating setback, doubt. Why did I do this? What was I thinking? or just confusion, or just times where we just don't feel inspired. We lose sight of that inspiration we had when we first started. And so ending something, whether it's graduating or ending, coming to the end of our life, or something that we committed to doing, a promise that we made, is really meaningful, I think, and something that we need to celebrate both. So perseverance, I wanted to talk about perseverance because I feel like that's a big aspect of ending something well, or going through something that we started well. It's something that generally is good to have, like some grit, right? Some determination when things get difficult, but it's also an important aspect of a life of faith. So let's see here. That's what I just said. This is from James. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. So, in our life and in our life of faith, we have moments, right, of moments of clarity, moments of inspiration, moments of transformation. And those are very meaningful moments in our life. But also our life is also defined by the long haul, like our determination, our commitment over a long period of time. It's both, but our long-term dedication to God's will, despite whatever challenges may come along the way. And there are major challenges that come along the way, very sometimes discouraging, heartbreaking challenges that come along the way. This is from the Divine Principle. To fulfill the indemnity condition, to restore the foundation of faith, a central figure must demonstrate absolute faith in God during a requisite period of time under certain conditions. And so this is why we see that people in history, people in the Bible, central figures, it wasn't just, you don't read the story that they just, they made a commitment to God and that was the end, They had to go through a period of time where they had to demonstrate that commitment was real and that they were willing to go through whatever hardships to get to the other side and show God that they really meant it. And that's why we see the numbers come over and over again, the 3s, the 7s, the 10s, the 21, the 40s, where people had to show over a period of days, years, months, decades, that they really meant what they said. Another point that I wanted to talk about is that perseverance sometimes requires change. True perseverance is not stubborn repetition. It's a commitment to a goal, not to the method. And I think this is important because just like a lot of words, they have some kind of a connotation, right? Like when we think of humility. Perseverance is kind of one of those, because some of you may be thinking, oh, perseverance, that's like drudgery or like suffering, or it just means that doing the same thing over and over again, hoping that something will change. And what I'm saying today is that perseverance, I don't think is really meant to mean that. Sometimes maybe we have to keep at something, but it's not about persevering for the thing, but it's about the goal. Like, what are we trying to accomplish in our life? What do we want to see happen out of our efforts? Those of you who have been in GPA or are going to GPA this year, I'm sure that in your mind when you were out there doing your different activities, especially fundraising, you weren't thinking, oh, I just got to keep fundraising, and if I just keep fundraising, then I'll get my goal, like of what kind of person I want to be after a year or 2 years. That's not necessarily the case, right? I mean, fundraising is just part of the program. But if we're thinking about, like, what kind of person do I want to be after this year, after these 2 years, then we're thinking it's not just about the action, but like how can I use this time and this opportunity to become, and the people in my life that are here right now to enable me to become that person. Sometimes if we do the same thing over and over again, then actually it's not very effective. Sometimes it can be an excuse. And this comes up a lot of times in our relationships. It took me 20 years of marriage to understand a very simple point. And that is that my wife wants me to let her know and tell her in words that I love her. And it's not that in the last 20 years I never said it, but I never understood how important it was for her to hear that on a regular basis. The words themselves. Not enough for her to just know that I love her because of my actions and my general aura. But for me to make the effort to every day tell her that I love you. And it took, a long time for me to understand that point. And it took persistence on her part to find a way to help me to understand it. Because we get caught up in this in relationships, right? Like, I told her that I love her, a while ago. Should be good enough. Or, I told my kids, clean up after themselves, and they're not listening to me, or something. Or I told my parent, my mom or my dad, something. And we get frustrated because, well, if I just keep saying the same thing over and again, and they're not listening to me, then I did my part. We can get caught up in persistent behavior, persistent expectation of others. But we can make that an excuse for not actually finding, like, Adonia found a creative way to help me to understand this point. It took a while, but she didn't give up. She didn't get angry and bitter at me for not understanding something that I should have probably understood 20 years ago. But she found a creative way to convey that to me, and because of that, I've gotten much better. Not perfect, but better. I understand the point, finally. And so persistence to the goal, with the hope, which is for us to have a thriving, dynamic, loving relationship, sometimes means that we're persistent to the goal, but not to the behavior. Not to the thing that we can sometimes get stuck on. If the goal is for us to have that kind of a relationship, then we need to be persistent in finding a way to reach that person in a way that they can hear. Same with our kids, same with our parents. We want to have a great relationship with our parents, we want to have a great relationship with our kids, we want to have a great relationship with our in-laws or whatever, then persistence is a great attribute, but only if we use it in a way that fuels us to find the way to reach the person. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for that. So this is a kind of adding on to that point. Our true Father said, you must have a clear goal and never give up on it. But if one method doesn't work, try another. Heaven is watching to see if you have the creativity and heart to continue. And this is something that we clearly see in many examples, but especially in the life of Jesus, right? In Jesus' life, there was a foundation prepared by John the Baptist to receive him, and that didn't pan out, and John the Baptist went a different direction. So Jesus could have easily just maybe got frustrated and said, okay, whatever. But he went a different route, and he tried to take John the Baptist's position himself and proclaim to the people who he was. Then eventually after that, people still wouldn't accept him, so then he went the way of the cross. But Jesus found a different way because he wasn't just trying to have the people accept him. That wasn't the end goal. The end goal was that Jesus' life was a life for humanity. And so he was going to make it a life for humanity no matter what, even if the people didn't accept him, even if John the Baptist turned his back on him. Jesus knew his purpose. And if he could serve that purpose by going to the cross, then so be it. So being in touch with our purpose, or like what we're trying to do in our life, is so important. Another point that I wanted to share is that perseverance is especially important when trying something new. Trying something new is daunting. And many times we, in our life, can become comfortable with the things that we're doing because we are used to doing them. We know how to do them already. We're good at doing those things. But trying something new means that we're going to make mistakes. We're not going to be an expert in that thing anymore. We're going to be a beginner. And that's not exciting. As I find that I'm not as excited about that as I used to be in my life. When I was in my 20s, I remember there was a guy who came from Korea, and he had an international driver's license, and he was like, hey, can you help me to pass the test so that I can get my American driver's license? I don't remember, something like that. So I was helping him like learn how to parallel park and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And then when we were living in Missouri, there was a Japanese exchange student there. And he was like, I've never driven a day in my life. Can you help me to get my license? I was like, sure. And we were living in Missouri, and we were so out in the country, and we had our minivan parked on the top of this hill. And so I'd never really taught somebody how to drive from nothing before. This was a new experience for me. And so we got in the car, and the car is at the top of the hill. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. So he got in the car, and I'm like, yeah, no big deal. Just start the car and put it in drive. And he ran the car right into the retaining wall, right next to the... We were going like 5 miles an hour, so it didn't do a lot of damage to the car. But he was shooken up. I don't know what the right word here is. He was shaking, and then I asked him later if he wanted to try again, and he was like, no, I'm good. I'm not sure if he ever wanted to drive again. Actually, in Japan, many times, he may not even need to drive, but like in Southeast Missouri, it's helpful to have a car. But I made this really stupid mistake. I didn't think much of it at the time, but later on when I reflected, I was like, who takes a person who's never driven a car before and puts them at the top of the hill and expects them to drive well? I set him up for failure, is what I realized. I set him up to fail. And I felt really bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally crushed probably his confidence to be able to drive, and he felt so bad because he damaged our van, even though it was just a little bit. And I had this kind of cool experience this last week when we were in Missouri. Adonia suggested, maybe it'd be nice to start helping the Aiden and Nathan to learn how to drive. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I was like, okay, I had to learn my lesson. So we went to a nice flat area where you put the car into drive and it just sits there, right? And it worked out fine. Such a surprise. That was actually a really nice experience for me. But when I think when I was younger, I was excited to try new things. I didn't really think so much about whether I was a beginner or if I made mistakes or whatever. But I think now as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm starting to analyze things a little bit more. I'm like, well, if I start something new, that means I got to kind of start over, and I'm going to make mistakes, and it's going to be like, how am I going to feel about myself and my self-esteem and my confidence and all these things. I don't want to go through that. Maybe I just stick with what's comfortable, what I'm already kind of good at. And but at the same time, I find myself, and I think probably all of you too, wanting to try something new, right? I think that we don't stay satisfied with being where we're at and just doing the same thing. We want to try something new. We want to be adventurous in life, right? And so that means in some ways starting at the bottom and working our way up and making mistakes and doing things that we look back on later and it's like, well, that was kind of dumb. And that's not a bad thing. It's not that's realistic, but it's not a bad to try something new, to have that kind of a fresh heart in that way, to not be stopped just because trying something new would be uncomfortable. So perseverance. But it can be very easy when you start something new to get discouraged early on. Maybe things didn't work out the way we thought. Maybe I didn't make as much money in my business as quickly as I'd hoped I would. Maybe I lost sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe it's not as important as it was to me. Maybe I'm in a new school and, hard to make friends. There's all kinds of things that can happen, different challenges that come up in our life. And being able to call on that grit within us, that perseverance that God, I think, instilled into each human being that is a part of who God is, to get through the difficult times, I think is important. Sometimes we fail at things. And that's okay. Here's another quote that I really liked from our true mother. She said, "When you begin something for heaven, you may not succeed right away. But if you continue with sincerity and humility, God will guide you." And I believe that's true. This is the kind of perseverance that allows us to grow, not just to survive or to get through difficult times in our life, but to thrive and to move forward in our lives. I really, one thing Adonia and I were talking about the other day was that we, after all these years of working on this renovation of the outside of the building, we're finally at the home stretch. That's, I was almost surprised when I was like, oh my God, because I kind of thought it would never end. And here we are, we got so much done. Everybody's pitched in, we were able to do some things as a group, some things we had to hire out. And, if we had never had the desire or the plan to do it, it just never would have happened. But we needed some level of perseverance along the way because there was a lot of roadblocks. Oh, we don't have enough money, or how are we going to do that, or how are we going to do this? But because we set our mind to it, we found things along the way. We found grants and not scholarships, but like people gave money for certain things. And then, Eugene's cousin moved here and he needed work and we needed work done. So it kind of worked out really well. And little by little, we've been able to make a lot of progress. And we're almost done. And I was like, wow, it only took, how long has it been? 7 years? I don't know. It's been a while. But we're nearing the end. And I was like, oh, it's kind of a testament in a way, in a small way. But I feel like when I look at my life and when I look at our community, and probably when you look at your life, I think that you probably also felt like you felt a calling, you felt a desire to do something, you felt an inspiration to do something new or to commit to something, and you realized that when you started, it wasn't as easy as you had hoped it would be, or some unexpected barriers or roadblocks came up along the way. But I think that the more meaningful or the more valuable something is that we do, the more we're going to come up against these kind of difficulties. And it's a sign in some ways that there's something really valuable and meaningful for me at the other end, on the other side of those difficulties. That if we can overcome whatever challenges there are, that God has something special and beautiful for us to experience. So, each of us is on a journey of restoration. Sometimes we hit walls, we get tired, we lose sight of why we started. But God has high hopes for each of us. God wishes for us to persevere and be victorious in whatever we are doing. And when we make mistakes, when we stumble and rise again, God is with us and encouraging us. He's not looking for us to be perfect, but God is looking for faithful people who are willing to keep going and keep trying and keep growing. So let's strive to be people who can persevere, not just repeating the same actions, but always striving for the goal that we have in our lives, and growing towards God's will. We can be bold to try new things and support one another on the journey. Please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent, thank you for each and every single person that is here this morning, that you've guided here, and that you've walked with, Heavenly Parent, to bring them to this point in their lives. Heavenly Parent, it's such a humbling opportunity that we have to know one another and to know you at this time in our lives, at this time in history, Heavenly Parent. This moment will never come again. And I pray, Heavenly Parent, that regardless of what we may be going through, whether we're at a beginning, at an end, or dealing with the things that are in the middle, Heavenly Parent, I pray, Heavenly Parent, that each and every single one of us can call you to walk by our side, that we can see the ways in which you are guiding us, that you are guiding our families and the things that we committed to, Heavenly Parent. I pray that we can remind ourselves why we started on this path, Heavenly Parent, in the first place, why we made the decisions that we made, Heavenly Parent. And even if things are difficult now, Heavenly Parent, please help us to be reminded and to remember the calling that you put on our hearts that had brought us to this point in our life right now, Heavenly Parent. That purpose, that inspiration, that calling never went away, even if we lost sight of it, Heavenly Parent. And at the end of the day, Heavenly Parent, please help us to live well and to end well. Whatever we are doing in our life right now, Heavenly Parent, please help us to end well. We don't want to become discouraged. We don't want to become jaded and angry, Heavenly Parent. None of us. But sometimes we do. So please help us to heal, to grow, and to never leave your side, Heavenly Parent, in the things that we are doing. I thank you, and I offer this time together, the sermon, the service to you on behalf of all of our blessed families here. Amen and adieu. Thank you.